Hello Year 10. Over the last couple of lessons we've looked at some of the key skills needed to answer the English language paper 1 reading section, or the posh comprehension as I like to call it. And today I want us to focus perhaps a little bit more loosely on how to interpret and understand the sort of texts that will be on the exam. The text on the paper 1 reading section will always be a 19th century fiction text, something from the Victorian period. Now, that obviously brings with it a few potential issues in how to fully understand a text from the past. Most obviously, the issue of difficult vocabulary that can be hard to interpret and understand. Some archaic words will be defined in a glossary for you. Now, if a word is archaic, it essentially means that it's an old word that has generally fallen out of use, and the glossary will of course help you with those. But there are other difficulties in reading Victorian literature. The sentence structures can be very long and wordy in style, and even the words that are not archaic can be a bit sophisticated for a modern teenage reader. Now, reading the context of difficult vocabulary as well as the words that surround it usually allow you to understand broadly what a word means. This lesson, we're going to look at a short extract from the novel Oliver Twist, written by Charles Dickens in 1838. Now, I've chosen an extract from this story because it is famous enough for you all to know the plot in some form, and thus we don't need any intro to it. The story is about a young orphan, Oliver, and this extract is taken from near the start of the novel, and at this point, Oliver is living in a workhouse and is nominated by the other boys to request more food. Now, remember that a workhouse is like an orphanage, but there's a tough and cruel environment in which the boys are malnourished and abused. Listen carefully to the extract, and then I will tell you what it is that I want you to do for the rest of the lesson. The room in which the boys were fed was a large stone hall with a copper at one end, out of which the master, dressed in an apron for the purpose and assisted by one or two women, ladled the gruel at meal times. The bowls never needed washing. The boys polished them with their spoon until they shone again. And when they had performed this operation, which never took very long, the spoons being nearly as large as the bowls, they would sit staring at the copper with such eager eyes as if they could have devoured the very bricks of which it was composed, employing themselves meanwhile in sucking their fingers most assiduously, with the view of catching up any stray splashes of gruel that might have been cast thereon. Boys have generally excellent appetites. Oliver Twist and his companions suffered the tortures of slow starvation for 3 months. At last, they got so voracious and wild with hunger that one boy, who was tall for his age, hinted darkly to his companions that unless he had another basin of gruel, he was afraid he might some night happen to eat the boy sleeping next to him, who happened to be a weak youth of young age. He had a wild, hungry eye, and they implicitly believed him. A council was held. Lots were cast for who should walk up to the master after supper that evening and ask for more. And it fell to Oliver Twist. The evening arrived. The boys took their places. The master, in his cook's uniform, stationed himself at the copper. His assistants ranged themselves behind him. The gruel was served out, and a long grace was said over short commons. The gruel disappeared. The boys whispered to each other and winked at Oliver, while his next neighbours nudged him. Child as he was desperate with hunger and reckless with misery. He rose from the table and, advancing to the master's basin and spoon in hand, said, somewhat alarmed at his own temerity, "Please, sir, I want some more." The master was a fat, healthy man, but he turned very pale. He gazed with stupefied astonishment on the small rebel for some seconds, and then clung for support to the copper. The assistants paralysed with wonder, the boys with fear. "What?" said the master at length, in a faint voice. "Please, sir," replied Oliver, "I want some more." The master aimed a blow at Oliver's head with the ladle, pinioned him in his arms, and shrieked aloud for the beadle. and that's the end of the extract. And that's an equivalent length that will be on your exam, so it's quite short and manageable. So for this lesson, rather than answering specific exam questions, I want you to complete a more general analysis and interpretation of the text, using the instructions shared with you as a document and attached to the classroom instructions box, and then complete the activities on the slides presentations set as an assignment. Now, ideally, I would like you to work collaboratively with a partner on this, though you could easily work alone on the tasks. Now, I haven't maxed you up in advance, as there are some screens that I cannot see via Securely, though I will be online in the lesson to hook pairs up. Or you could contact another member of the group directly and work together to help me via Google Hangout who you'll be working with on this investigation into a Victorian text.